Part 1. Pandora's Story. Imagine a world without suffering, without disease, without the specter of death looming over humanity. Then came a gift. A stunning, cryptic gift that was never meant to be opened. This is the story of Pandora's box. But the truth is far more complex and far more haunting than you've been told. To understand Pandora's story, we must first travel back to a time when humanity lived in a kind of paradise. But this wasn't the doing of the gods, it was the doing of a titan named Prometheus. Prometheus, whose name means foresight, was different from his titan brothers. While the titans waged war against the Olympians, Prometheus had the unique ability to see the future and knew that the titans, under Cronus, were doomed to lose the war against the younger, more dynamic Olympians. Being pragmatic, Prometheus sided with Zeus and the new gods, helping them overthrow the Titans and establish their rule on Mount Olympus. This strategic move ensured his survival and granted him the faith of Zeus, who entrusted him with the task of creating humankind as a reward for his support during the war against the other Titans, allowing Prometheus to mold them from clay and give them shape. The goddess Athena then breathed life into them. Prometheus created upright, reasoned beings, making humans in the image of the gods to gain a greater purpose. But Prometheus held a deep affection for humankind. He watched the creatures he had molded from clay and saw their potential. He watched them suffer in a world shrouded in darkness and bitter cold. Defying Zeus's command, Prometheus committed an act of ultimate defiance. He stole divine fire from the heavens and brought it down to mortals. Fire changed everything for these early humans. It provided warmth in the freezing nights, light in the darkness, the ability to forge tools, cook food, to create civilization. Humanity flourished, and for the first time, they were no longer helpless creatures cowering in caves. They were builders, creators, almost divine. Zeus was absolutely enraged by this betrayal. Prometheus had upset the natural order. He had given mortals a power that was meant for the gods alone. Zeus condemned him to eternal torment for this transgression and chained Prometheus to a rock. And an eagle, the emblem of Zeus, was sent to devour his liver every day, only for it to regenerate each night, creating an endless cycle of torture and agony. In ancient Greece, the liver was thought to be the base of human emotions, but Zeus wasn't satisfied with just punishing Prometheus. No, he wanted revenge on humanity itself. He wanted them to regret ever accepting fire that was stolen from the gods. And so, in the halls of Olympus, a plan began to take shape, a plan that would bring suffering into the world in a way that could never be undone. Zeus called upon Hephaestus, the god of fire, metalworking, and the forge. "Craft for me a woman," Zeus ordered, "but not an ordinary woman. She must be flawless, captivating, a creation so exquisite that everyone who lays eyes upon her will be utterly enchanted." The creation of Pandora. Hephaestus labored at his forge with unmatched mastery, sculpting clay with the same hands that had forged the gods' mighty weapons. He shaped a figure of breathtaking beauty, a woman whose mere presence would mesmerize anyone who beheld her. Zeus didn't stop there. He called upon each of the Olympians to bestow a gift to this creation, each god and goddess contributing something to make her absolutely irresistible, but also lethal and dangerous. Aphrodite, the goddess of love and beauty, bestowed upon her grace and desire that would make men's hearts race and their judgment cloud. Athena, the goddess of wisdom, warfare, and crafts, dressed her in silvery robes and taught her the skill of weaving, making her accomplished and refined. Apollo gave her musical talent, a voice that could soothe and charm. Hermes, the trickster god and messenger, gave her the most dangerous gift of all, a cunning mind, persuasive speech, and a deceitful heart. He gave her the ability to lie as sweetly as she told the truth. Each god contributed, and when they were finished, they named her Pandora, which means all gifted, or gift from all. She was the first woman, created not out of love or necessity, but as a weapon. But the gift wasn't complete. Zeus had one more element to add to his revenge. He presented Pandora with a sealed box. Zeus looked at Pandora with insincere kindness and said, "This is my wedding gift to you. But you must promise me one thing. Never, under any circumstance, open this box. What's inside is not meant for mortal eyes." Zeus knew exactly what he was doing. Hermes had gifted Pandora a curiosity trait, along with all those other gifts. The command not to open the box was like setting honey in front of a bear and expecting it to walk away. Pandora meets Prometheus. Pandora was sent down to Earth with one purpose: to marry Prometheus, the brother of the Titan Prometheus. Prometheus was the opposite of his brother in every way. Where Prometheus was always thinking ahead, careful and cautious, Prometheus was impulsive, acting without considering the consequences. And before being chained to the rock, Prometheus had warned his brother explicitly, "If Zeus ever sends you a gift, refuse it. No matter how beautiful or tempting it may be, it will be a trap. Trust nothing that comes from Olympus delivered under the guise of a gift." But when Prometheus first saw Pandora, all of Prometheus's warnings fled from his mind entirely. She was breathtaking, perfect, and everything he had ever dreamed of. Against every warning, against his brother's desperate pleas echoing in his memory, Prometheus welcomed Pandora into his home and made her his wife. And along with her came that mysterious box, sitting in the corner of their home like a ticking time bomb. The weight of curiosity. Days turned into weeks in Prometheus and Pandora's home. They were even happy at first, while Pandora tried to embody the ideal of a perfect wife, working hard to balance the warring traits the gods had bestowed upon her. But every single day, that box called out to her. It rested in silence and perfectly sealed, but to Pandora, it pulsed with urgency. What treasures or terrors hid inside? Why the command to leave it untouched? The unanswered questions became an unbearable weight pressing on her heart. She would walk past it and feel her fingers twitch. She would lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, imagining what treasures Zeus might have placed within. Gold, jewels, divine secrets, magical powers. Every time she tried to talk to Prometheus about it, he would shake his head. Zeus commanded that it never be opened. "We must obey the king of the gods." But that answer only made the mystery deeper, making the temptation that much stronger. Pandora tried to distract herself. She wove beautiful tapestries, she sang, she tended the home. But always, her eyes would drift back to that box. The curiosity that Hermes had planted in her soul grew like a vine, completely consuming her thoughts. Just a peek, she thought. Just lift the lid for a moment, to see what's inside, then close it again. What harm could come from simply looking? Knowledge isn't dangerous. Keeping secrets is dangerous. She rationalized, she bargained with herself. She created elaborate justifications for why opening the box would actually be the right thing to do. The moment of opening. One day, when Prometheus was away, Pandora found herself alone with the box. Her preoccupation with the box contents had reached an apex. The weight unbearable, and she had reached her breaking point. She approached the box slowly, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. Her hands trembling as she reached for the lid. "Just a look," she whispered to herself. "Just one quick look, and then I'll close it forever. I'll finally know, and this torture will end." Her fingers gripped the lid. It felt heavy, far heavier than it looked. For a moment, she hesitated. A deep primal instinct warned her to stop. But curiosity was stronger than instinct. She lifted the lid. The release. For a single moment, there was silence. Pandora looked into the box, trying to see what lay within its depths. Then, chaos. A shrieking wind exploded from the box with such force that it knocked Pandora backward. But this was no ordinary wind. It was alive, filled with writhing, screaming, terrible things. From the box poured every evil, every misery, every affliction that would plague humanity for all time. Disease came first. Thousands illnesses spiraling out in grotesque forms. Plague and fever, cancer and corruption, each one a new way for the human body to fail and suffer. Pain followed, not just physical agony, but emotional torment. The pain of loss, of betrayal, of heartbreak. Old age crawled out, bringing with it the slow decay of the body, the fading of the mind, the inevitability of decline. Death itself emerged, cold and final, casting its shadow across the world for the first time. Suddenly, humanity was no longer immortal in their innocence, they were mortal, finite, already dying from the day they were born. Envy slithered out, poisoning relationships and communities. Greed followed, an insatiable hunger that could never be filled. Hatred burst forth, teaching humans to despise one another for the smallest differences. Violence, war, famine, pestilence, all the horsemen of human suffering galloped out into the world. Madness, despair, anxiety, fear, every psychological torment that would ever haunt a human mind. Jealousy, revenge, cruelty, vanity, every character flaw that would lead humanity to hurt itself and others. They surged like a tidal wave of darkness, sweeping across the earth in an instant. Pandora watched in horror as her moment of weakness unleashed suffering on humankind. She tried to close the lid, pushing against the force of the escaping evils, but it was too late. They were free, and they would never be contained again. The perfect world that Prometheus had envisioned for humanity, full of promise and potential, was now irreversibly marked by anguish and suffering. Death had arrived. Pain was now part of the human condition. The age of innocence lost. Agony had become humanity's constant companion. Pandora collapsed beside the box, sobbing. She understood the magnitude of what she had done. She realized in that moment that she had been created for this purpose, manipulated and designed to bring about this catastrophe, but the guilt still crushed her. Hope remains. But then, in the silence after the storm, Pandora heard something. A small voice, gentle and warm, coming from inside the box. "Please," the voice said, "let me out too." Pandora, now terrified of releasing anything else, hesitated. Hadn't she done enough damage? Shouldn't she keep this jar sealed forever, preventing whatever remained inside from escaping? But the voice was so different from the others. Where the evils had been shrieking and violent, this voice was calm, comforting even. "Please," it said again, "humanity will need me. Let me out." With trembling hands, Pandora lifted the lid one more time. From the box floated a small glowing spirit, not violent or grotesque like the others, but beautiful, warm, radiant with a gentle light. This was Elpis, a spirit that personified hope. The spirit gazed at Pandora with compassion and kindness, not judgment. When she took flight into the world, trailing behind the evils but carrying a different mission, where death brought finality, hope offered renewal. Where disease inflicted agony, hope offered healing. Where despair tried to break the human spirit, hope lifted it back up. Elpis didn't erase the evils. They were still out there, still wreaking havoc. But she gave humanity something priceless, the power to persevere through hardship, the resilience to rise again even when all seems lost, the conviction that better days might lie ahead. The aftermath. When Prometheus returned and found out what happened, he was devastated, but there was nothing to be done. The evils were loose in the world, and no power in heaven or earth could put them back. Humanity would now know suffering. They would know pain and disease and death. They would struggle, starve, fight, and grieve. The paradise they had briefly known was gone forever, but they would also know hope. And for humanity, hope would prove to be the most powerful force of all, the thing that gave them the strength to endure every evil that Pandora had unleashed. As for Pandora herself, she had to live with the knowledge of what she had done. She became the first human to experience guilt, regret, and shame, fitting, perhaps, since she had brought those feelings into the world. But she also became the first human to experience redemption and forgiveness, because despite everything, Prometheus didn't abandon her. He understood that she had been manipulated by the gods for their revenge. She was both perpetrator and victim of Zeus's cruel plan. Together, Pandora and Prometheus lived out their days in a world that was now much harder, much darker than before. But they lived with hope by their side. Part 2. what this myth really means. Now that we've heard the full story of Pandora's box, let's talk about what this myth is actually telling us, because it's far more relevant to your life right now than you might think. The origin story of human suffering. This myth is an ancient attempt to answer one of humanity's oldest questions. Why do bad things happen? Why is life filled with pain and suffering? If the gods exist and are all-powerful, why don't they shield us? The Greeks weren't concerned with making their gods seem righteous. Zeus wasn't a loving father figure. He was a powerful, petty, vengeful king who would punish an entire species for one titan's defiance. The myth of Pandora essentially says, life is hard because the gods decided to make it hard. Suffering isn't your fault. It's cosmic punishment. Oddly enough, this brought a kind of solace, but there's a deeper layer here. The myth acknowledges that curiosity, this fundamentally human trait, led to our suffering. Pandora was destined to open the box because curiosity is inseparable from human nature. The Greeks grasped that the impulse driving us to question, discover, and build is the very same force that brings us to ruin. The danger of forbidden knowledge. Pandora's box is one of many myths across cultures that warn about forbidden knowledge. Parallels can be drawn to the Garden of Eden, Eve eating from the tree of knowledge, bringing sin and death into the world. Both stories feature a woman, a forbidden act, curiosity, and the loss of innocence. These myths reflect a deep human anxiety. What if some knowledge is dangerous? What if some discoveries should never be made? And this is where the myth speaks directly to our current moment. We live in an age when knowledge and technology are advancing at an unprecedented pace. We're developing artificial intelligence that might surpass human intelligence. We're pushing the boundaries of what's possible in technology, biology, and physics. Every major technological leap comes with its own Pandora's box moment. The scientists who developed nuclear weapons immediately understood they had unleashed something terrible into the world. The father of the atom bomb, Robert Oppenheimer, after witnessing the Trinity atomic test in 1945, famously quoted the Bhagavad Gita, "Now, I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." The box had been unsealed. The capability to erase entire cities in moments had entered humanity's grasp, and that knowledge could never be erased. Today, we face similar moments. AI researchers confront the unsettling possibility that they're developing intelligence capable of concluding that human existence is no longer necessary. Genetic engineers debate whether we should edit human embryos, knowing we can't predict all the consequences. Tech companies know their platforms fuel polarization and mental health problems, yet the damage is done. We've crossed a threshold and can't undo our dependence on social connectivity. The myth of Pandora asks us, is all knowledge worth pursuing? Should we open every box just because we can? Victim blaming in the first woman. This is part of a long tradition of myths that place the responsibility for human suffering on women. Eve and the apple, Pandora and the box. In both cases, women are portrayed as weak-willed and ultimately responsible for humanity's fall from grace. But in the case of Pandora, her fate is predetermined by Zeus. She was designed to open that box. She is both perpetrator and victim, a tragic figure caught in divine machinations she never asked to be part of. She didn't ask to be created. She didn't ask to be filled with conflicting qualities. She didn't ask to be given a box, whose contents were unknown to her and should never be opened. When viewed through this lens, the myth turns into a narrative about blame, accountability, and holding the powerless responsible for institutional breakdowns. Pandora takes the fall for Zeus's revenge plot. Modern readers can appreciate the myth while also critiquing and debating its gender politics, recognizing both its cultural significance and potential problematic elements. The impossible nature of suppressing curiosity. Here's a truth the ancient Greeks understood. You cannot tell a human not to be inquisitive. It goes against our fundamental nature. Curiosity is what makes us human. It's what drove us out of caves and across oceans. It's what makes us ask questions, conduct experiments, create art, and push boundaries. Every human achievement started with someone wondering, what if? The gods telling Pandora not to open the box is like telling a bird not to fly. It was inevitable that she would open it, which means Zeus's revenge was guaranteed to work. He understood human nature better than humans understood themselves. Today, we see this same principle in action everywhere. When you tell teenagers not to do something, you've practically guaranteed they'll do it. The forbidden becomes irresistible. When governments try to suppress information, it spreads faster than ever. The Streisand effect, where attempting to hide something just draws more attention to it, is Pandora's box in digital form. The question isn't whether we'll open the box, we always will. The question is, what do we do after we open it? Hope as humanity's superpower. Now let's examine hope, for this is the moment when the myth shifts from despair into something deeply meaningful. Evil was released from the box and spread across the world. Disease, death, pain, suffering, it's all out there and can't be put back. That's the human condition. Life is hard, suffering is guaranteed, pain is inevitable. But hope remains. But the more common and meaningful interpretation is that hope emerged too, giving humanity the one tool we need to survive everything else. Hope doesn't erase suffering. It doesn't cure disease or prevent death. What hope does is give us the strength to face suffering, to endure pain, to keep going when everything seems hopeless. This is humanity's superpower, the ability to hope for better, despite overwhelming evidence that things are terrible. Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist who survived Nazi concentration camps, wrote about this in Man's Search for Meaning. Frankl viewed hope as an indispensable drive that stems from discovering purpose and meaning in life, even in dire circumstances. He observed that the prisoners who survived concentration camps weren't necessarily the strongest or healthiest, they were the ones who maintained hope. Hope for reunion with loved ones. Hope for future meaning. Hope for something beyond the horror of their present. Hope is what makes a cancer patient fight through one more round of chemotherapy. Hope is what makes someone who lost everything in a disaster start rebuilding. Hope is what makes us believe tomorrow can be better than today, even when today was terrible. Without hope, the other evils would have destroyed humanity long ago. We would have given up, but hope whispers, keep going. So what is the myth of Pandora's box really telling us, stripped down to its essential wisdom? Life is hard, and suffering is real. The Greeks didn't sugarcoat this. Pain, disease, death, heartbreak, these are part of the human experience. The myth acknowledges this honestly. Curiosity is both our greatest strength and our greatest weakness. We can't help but open the jars we're told not to open. This leads us to both incredible discoveries and terrible mistakes. It makes us human. Some consequences can't be undone. Once the box is open, you can't put everything back. Some knowledge can't be unknown. Some actions can't be taken back. We have to live with the consequences of our choices. But hope changes everything. Hope doesn't erase suffering. It gives you the power to endure it and believe in better days ahead. The ancient Greeks told this story thousands of years ago, but we're still living it every single day. Every time we face a difficult choice, every time we're tempted by forbidden knowledge, every time we deal with the consequences of past decisions, every time we need hope to get through another day. Pandora opened her box. We keep opening ours. And somehow, despite everything, hope keeps us going. That's not just mythology. That's the human story.